Hi, welcome back to with your host, David Krayden. We want to talk about a couple of issues today because I think they're very, very important. I want to reiterate that there's going to be a march across Canada on September 20th against gender ideology and LGBTQ plus indoctrination in the schools.
So we are in a very precarious position in this country. We need political change, but we also need to resolve to resist.
Now, the hashtag is 1 million March for Children. And this is going to be a 1 million person march from coast to coast in Canada. And it's on September 20th. There are people out there who are confusing a lot of other people with the date. There's other protests going on around that date. We should be focused on this because it is something we have to achieve in terms of numbers, and we can do it if people stay focused on this. And this could be a phenomenal march. It's being organized primarily by Canada's Muslims, but they're inviting people of all faiths: Christians, Jews, Sikhs, Hindus, Zoroastrians, Buddhists, even atheists. Everybody, come out if you are concerned about what's happening to your children in the school system. I can't make that much clearer. And I think it's very important we do this. I want to touch on a few things this week because it's, as I say every week, there's no question period. So some people think the news has stopped. Believe me, this Liberal government is working overtime to make your life miserable. They continue on their road to censorship. We don't have access anymore to Canadian news on Facebook and Instagram. Meta has boycotted Canadian news, and it's going to get worse and not better. But I want to focus on a few things today which I think are really, really important. And the first of which is the war in Ukraine. There hasn't been a war like this since the First World War in terms of there being a news blackout. There's virtually nobody covering this war from the front. Do you see anything on the mainstream news? Even on most independent news, there's nobody there reporting from the front. And this has always been the case in previous wars. The last war where this happened was the First World War, where there were no reporters at the front. They were getting all of their information, all of their propaganda from the government, from government censors, who told them virtually every week there was a huge push going on at the front and the Allies were victorious. This went on for 4 years. While millions of people died, millions of soldiers lived in horrendous circumstances, surrounded by mud, filth, the stench of dead bodies, the literal corpses, and rats the size of cats feeding off of the dead. Not to mention sometimes being waist high or at least knee high in water. And what was the outcome of this war? A communist government in Russia, the fall of all of the European monarchs, with the exception of one, and economic disaster, not to mention millions of people killed and incapacitated. And the armaments industry made, in today's dollars, trillions of dollars off of this war. I hate to say it, but this is exactly what's happening in Ukraine right now. This is a disastrous war for Ukrainians. The population of this country has shrunk by 10 million people in the last few years, largely as a result not only of people dying, of military age males dying on the battlefield, but people fleeing the country. This war has to stop. And believe me, it's a lot more complex than the mainstream media is painting it. It's not just about the Russian invasion. The war goes back to 2014 in that part of Ukraine that is disputed, where the people living there are largely Russian. So it's a complex war. It's not simple. And just like the First World War, this is no war for democracy. It's no war to make the world safe for democracy. Ukraine is no democracy, and Volodymyr Zelenskyy is no democratic president of Ukraine. Now, supposedly there was an assassination attempt on him. I don't know how much of any of this we can believe, because all we're getting is propaganda. So, the Ukrainians are engaged in another big push. Where did you hear that one before? Where have we heard that historically? Ukraine is losing this war, and they're losing big time. In Russia, the more we push this country into a corner, the greater chance of a nuclear confrontation. Every time a NATO country says they're going to independently get involved in this war and attack Russia, they are not only fooling themselves, they are lying to us. Because an attack by one member of NATO is an attack by all, by the very NATO convention. Anybody who knows anything about the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, founded in 1949 for very good reasons to contain Soviet communism, can tell you that the idea of NATO is an attack by one, or an attack by all, or an attack upon all, means the entire alliance is engaged. That's what that means. So any country that's a member of NATO, Canada, the United States, and now most countries in Europe will be engaged in that war. And this will be catastrophic. The end will be nuclear confrontation and potentially nuclear oblivion if this continues. We need to end this war in Ukraine. This is the only sane policy. This is the only sane policy, and stop feeding the armaments industry. Stop feeding this war with billions of dollars of armaments. Canada continues to give Ukraine not only billions of dollars of money to buy arms, we're giving them tanks that they've already lost. And we're going to be giving them more tanks. And we can't even sustain our own military forces. But yet we've always got more for Ukraine to keep this war going. The Canadian military is in a sorry state. We are in no position to be loaning out tanks that are inevitably going to be blown away on the battlefield. This is simply throwing away military hardware. They're being blown away on the battlefield. We're not getting these tanks back. We're not getting any of this equipment back. It's being destroyed, has been destroyed in the war. Canada cannot afford to keep going down this path. And I'm telling you, this war every day looks more and more like the First World War, not just in terms of the propaganda and the complete lack of transparency, the complete lack of reporting, but also because it's a war that is intrinsically tied to alliance systems, just like the First World War was. When one country became involved, those countries allied to that country necessarily became involved. It was a domino effect until the whole European continent descended in war, and then the whole world followed through, inevitably, because of alliance systems. And if you're talking about nuclear devastation, I think we should be thinking about a way out of this war now. Because I've been saying this for the last year at least. We are sleepwalking towards nuclear Armageddon, and it's not getting any better. Every week we become closer to an accident, a mistake, to Latvia or Poland or another Western European nation that's a member of NATO, thinking it's going to act independently and interfere or attack Russia, and thinking it's not going to involve the entire NATO alliance. It will. It will. So that's what I'm going to say about Ukraine today. We've got to think this through and clearly. I want to touch on two other stories I've done for the post-millennial this week. The first of which is what's up? What happened to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's LGBTQ, and I'm not going to say the whole alphabet soup number, action plan. Whatever happened to that? $100 million last August 28th. He announced he was spending $100 million to promote the LGBTQ plus agenda. What happened to that money? Well, you know, it's being used against parents who don't want their children exposed to gender ideology in the schools. Did you know that? Yes. Contract was awarded to a company that is going to put together a plan to attack hateful parents who don't want their children exposed to the crap that's going on in our school system. So their taxpayer dollars are being used against them. And they're being labeled as hateful because they think their children should at least be telling them if they want to change their gender or think they want to change their gender. Or the school decides they can change their gender. These parents are demanding their rights. This is not hateful. This is being a good parent. And the Trudeau government is using taxpayer dollars to persecute them, to go after them, and to malign them as hateful. What else is the money being used for in this $100 million fund? Well, it's called a purge fund at some points, and you have to look at the website to believe this. This is incredible what is going on. They are spending money on choral events, singing about the supposed purge of LGBTQ people from the civil service, from the military, from the RCMP. They're spending money to help people explore queer history. They're spending money on an LGBTQ monument in Winnipeg, and untold other thing. We're just discovering where this money is because it's not all listed on the website. It's in pieces here, there, and everywhere. And we are just discovering how bad this is. But this is why there's a constant flow of propaganda, because the Trudeau government is funding it. They're financing this constant flow of propaganda.
Hello, Rainbow Railroad! Happy Pride season!
And that's why we continue to see this. I want to touch on one last thing, and this is unbelievable. But, you know, we have one of the most strange environment and climate change ministers in the world. Stephen Guilbeault, he's a former Greenpeace activist, an organization that has been accused of eco-terrorism in the past. This man is so extreme, he now thinks he can govern Canada's food policy through his environmental department. And what is he doing? He's given grocery stores up until the end of August to say why they don't think it's a good idea that plastic wrap should disappear from the meat department, or that plastic bags should not be available for people to put their vegetables and their fruit in when they're buying produce at the stores. They've got 30 days, basically, to respond to this. And at the end of the year, these mandates are going to come in. These restrictions and this ban on plastics in the grocery store. Now, this is absolutely insane. This is going to obviously lead to spoilage of meat. It's going to lead to meat rotting on the shelves. It's going to probably lead to disease. But that doesn't matter to Stephen Guilbeault. All that matters is the religion of environmentalism. Now, I don't know if he's going to find a way to tie climate change into this policy, but just watch him. He'll do it, because as far as these eco-extremists are concerned, everything somehow comes back to climate change. But this policy is damned to failure. And it's just more evidence that this Trudeau government, this liberal federal government in Canada, is off the rails and is crazy, certifiably crazy. And we as Canadians have got to say, enough, we're pushing back. We're resolving to resist. We're not going to take this anymore because it's nuts. This is policy dreamt up by people who have no semblance, no idea of what reality is anymore. They are so grounded in far left extreme environmental ideology that they cannot understand the real world anymore. And this is what we're facing. So push back on this. Tell your MP you're not going to live in a world where you can't even buy your steak wrapped beforehand. Say you've had enough. Thank you for listening today. I want to encourage you again, as I do every day, please ring that bell. Please subscribe to the station, because if you do, you'll continue to get this station, and we're going to fight back on Trudeau's censorship, which he has passed recently in Bill C11, C18, supposedly to ensure Canadian content, supposedly to ensure fairness from big tech. All it is, it's an internet extortion bill. This latest C18 that passed, the online news bill, is nothing but internet extortion by this government. And it's a means for this government to pay off the legacy media that it's already subsidizing. So the legacy media continues to promote this liberal government and Justin Trudeau. It's a payback. That's all this is. But you tell you what, it's not going to work because they don't want to be extorted. Meta has already said, no, we're not going to be into this extortion deal. Thank you very much, Justin Trudeau. So if we need to continue to hear and see the news that you need to see and hear, please subscribe and ring that bell. Support independent journalism. Support this station, because I'm going to continue to run after the stories that you want to hear. And I'm going to continue to talk about the things that very soon could be deemed mis or disinformation. Because you know what? The third part of Trudeau's censorship bill will be coming in the fall. And that's going to be called the Online Safety Bill. They already tried to introduce it a couple of years back. They're going to try again. And it's the most dangerous part of this three-pronged censorship legislation. And I want you to be aware of it. And we're going to fight back. We're going to fight back together. But please continue to support this station. Continue to support what I'm doing. And I will be back next week and before then to continue to talk about the issues that we are all concerned about. So thanks for listening. Thank you so much for subscribing and supporting the station. We could not move forward without you. What we're trying to do every week here is bring you the news you might not see everywhere else. And we're coming against Justin Trudeau's internet censorship laws. Please subscribe, ring that bell if you haven't done so already. I know it's annoying to ask. Believe me, I'm not a salesman. I'm a writer. But I really implore you to do that because I need this station to keep going. We want to keep bringing you the news that you want to hear. And if you want a story covered, let me know, please. Because that's where I'm getting a lot of news information from your tips. So thank you for being there for me. And you can also support this station by going on my Substacks and subscribing for $8 a month. Yes, I know it's free, but I can also use your support. So please do that if you can. And I'll continue to be here every week, every day if must needs be, to tell you what's really happening in this world of ours. And I'm in nobody's pocket. but I am on your side.